Okay. Good Thursday night, everybody.
Great. I'm looking forward to the weekend, especially here at Horseshoe Indianapolis.
Yeah, I'm excited to have John Dooley on from Horseshoe Indianapolis. And you're right. I was looking at the card, John. You guys should be pretty proud of what you guys have for a card on Saturday. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Chris Polson is our director of racing here, racing secretary, and I've known Chris for over 22 years now. He used to be the longtime racing secretary in Chicago, Sportsman's Park. We worked together back in the early 2000s, Arlington Park for many years, and now Chris doing a great job for us. 12 race card on Saturday, Indiana Derby Day, 8 stakes races. So really looking forward to talking more about the Indiana Oaks and Indiana Derby tonight.
Yeah, it's really impressive. I said before we went live here, I said, I get a little giddy just listening to your voice because I hear your voice and all I can think of is fairgrounds, and it's amazing the branding that goes along with a voice as an announcer. But I love it. That's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I've spent, you mentioned, Arlington Park and working with Chris, was there for 22 seasons at Arlington. But also, I think back in time, I've been at the fairgrounds in New Orleans since 2004. My first meet there was Thanksgiving of 2004 into 2005. So it's been quite a long time calling races there at the fairgrounds. And the meet we wrapped up in March with Epicenter winning the $1 million twinspires.com Louisiana Derby, Echo Zulu, the champion from 2021. She ran during the course of the meet. We had some terrific equine athletes running down south over the winter months at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, it's one of the things I saw when I was reading up about you tonight is I saw that you went to St. John's. I think they were still called the Redmen back then, correct?
Yes.
But you were there, and everything in my life I think about is all correlate when I was a kid with college basketball, and I'm pretty sure your time at St. John's was during the Chris Mullin area, right?
Yeah, Chris Mullin was playing basketball, the sweater, Lou Carnesecca, and my old fraternity, Sigma Chi Upsilon. We spent a lot of time going there to Madison Square Garden or games on the Queens campus. And of course, you talk about St. John's, Georgetown back in the day. That was a big rivalry with John Thompson and, of course, Patrick Ewing. The Georgetown Hoyas, but for me, it was always Jim Boeheim. The Syracuse Orangeman was always the thorn in my St. John's Redmond side during my college days.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are and nobody remembers back. I can tell you, college basketball. I love the game, but man, nothing beat the Big East back in those 1980s.
Yeah, back in those days. Yeah,
that 5 or 6 year span, boy, that was some great stuff with that. So I'll go around the horn here. Sean, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad to have John on again. John, so now you've been at Horseshoe Indianapolis for a little bit. What's the thing that you like more about Horseshoe Indianapolis versus other tracks you've been at? And what's the one thing you don't like as much?
I guess it's a combination, Sean. The fact that, personally with my schedule, calling races down at the fairgrounds basically from Thanksgiving through the end of March as we wrapped up, down there with Louisiana Derby Week. And then the great segue, I mean, for horsemen, if you're racing with us, a young trainer by the name of Lexus Clare comes to mind, some other trainers that make that circuit. It's a great circuit to have, basically year-round racing with Horseshoe Indianapolis kicking off mid-April, going through basically just before Fairgrounds starts off in November of this year. So it makes a great circuit, but at the same time, it's a long season. Everyone said, this is going to be a really long meet, over 120 racing days. And given the heat we've had here in Indiana, we've had some sweltering days we were forced to cancel due to the extreme heat, and the heat index is over 100 degrees. So at the same time, fortunate to have a long race meet to call, at the same time keeping that energy level up, keeping the enthusiasm for a season that basically goes until just before I start down at the fairgrounds. But everyone with Caesars Entertainment, Eric Hallstrom, our vice president of racing and general manager here, they've all been accommodating, and it's been great to be a part of the team here at Horseshoe Indianapolis.
So there's no vacation days for John G. Dooley.
I always, speaking of the East Coast, I do like to try to get back to New York. So maybe sometime in October, I'm going to try to take, a week or two off if I can get that time off. And maybe Jimmy McInerney, who will be calling the 100th season coming up at Ellis Park. Jimmy's come in here. He's done some handicapping in the past, some calling here in the past. Maybe I can get Jimmy Mack to fill in for me for a week or two so I can go back and visit my mom, who's now in her mid-80s and still living in Staten Island. I have to have a Joe and Pat's pizza. I can't let Frank Miramani have all the pizza fun. So try to make my way back to Staten Island, New York to see my family.
Okay, Tom, 22-1, Tom. Hopefully you got some bombs for us here when we get to the card. But how are you doing tonight?
I'm hanging right in there. Hey, John, how does it feel like calling all those extra quarter horse races now? That certainly has to be a change from Arlington. You get it a little at Fairgrounds, but at Arlington,
back in the day, through my since the year 2000, I do remember one or two quarter horse races. I think they used to have the Windy City Dash at Arlington back in the day. But, I opened up Lone Star Park in 1997. They had a fall meeting of champions there. It was a quarter horse race meet. So 97, 98, 1999, when I was calling down there in Grand Prairie, Texas, got a lot of quarter horse racing experience down there. But then really that was it, other than an occasional Windy City Dash at Arlington over the early 2000s. But they also run on Louisiana Champions Day down at the fairgrounds. They always run about 3 graded quarter horse stakes. So they have some really competitive quarter horse racing down there in Louisiana, as your viewers might understand, between us and Delta Downs, Evangeline Downs, Louisiana Downs. Really good and rich quarter horse racing down there in the Pelican State.
Okay. Terry, Hollywood Hay.
Oh, thank you. Hey, I've got a little bit of a quick story to tell you about Arlington Park. I took my wife there with her sister. Her sister lived within a mile of there, here back when you were still announcing, and it's been a while. And they bet on this horse, and the horse won, and they're jumping up and down, and I'm thinking, boy, they're not going to be too happy. They went down to cash it. It paid $220 to win. They came back. They both had a dime, and they were looking so distraught. And I said, well, where else can you make 10% on your money in a minute and a half? So that was kind of funny. Hey, I was wondering what gave you the decision, or how did you come to the decision to go into announcing races and get into the racing?
Hollywood, it all started with my family growing up on the East Coast, having a chance to go up to the Lake George region during the summers in August. And that also corresponded with the opening of Saratoga. So like a lot of people, the first time going to a racetrack, that's why I think it's so important. You bring new fans in. You can be just a really young child and you just get hooked on the atmosphere. And that was the case. My parents, I couldn't bet, but just went there and really took in the atmosphere of the spa and was hooked ever since. For my time going to the track for the first time, and then asked my mom, are there more tracks in the area? I had no idea, just a young Staten Island kid. And of course we went down a couple weeks later to Oceanport, New Jersey, took in the races from Monmouth Park. And really it was nonstop ever since that, just an express train to the betting windows after that. And then a career in horse racing for now, almost 35 years.
So at what age did you start betting?
As soon as I was able, legally, of course, my father would always go up to the windows, or my mom at Aqueduct. We would sit there during the winter months. My father has since passed away. He passed away after in early 2006, before I went back down to the fairgrounds season. But, my father, thinking back to those days, we'd always be first in line, in Aqueduct just after the first of the year to get that NYRA calendar. It was always a coveted NYRA calendar. Back in the days, you had to go there, to make sure you were first online. So thinking back to great experience with my parents that always would send my father or my mother up to the betting windows. But certainly while I was underage, but, don't tell the IRS.
Yeah, John, one of the questions I had keyed up is, I saw you did your internship, and I'm actually really curious, what was it like working with Tom Durking, and what'd you learn from Tom?
Well, when I was at St. John's, I actually had my first internship. Spent some time going down, speaking of Monmouth Park. The late Bob Weems was the announcer. He had a great circuit. He would call it Monmouth Park, and then he'd spend the winters at Turf Paradise in Phoenix, and got to know Bob really well. And he allowed me to spend time in the announcer booth. And at the time, Marshall Cassidy was the voice of the New York Racing Association. And then eventually in 1991, as a voice of the Breeders' Cup, Tom was hired to call it NYRA. And, Marshall was always, obviously, Marshall was a great man. He passed away, I think maybe a year or two ago. And, very articulate, very precise with his margins. And while Marshall instilled, the accuracy, the margins, Tom came in and basically, when he was working at NYRA, and just sit down with him and said, don't be afraid to bring your personality out. Don't be afraid to, add more color or be a little bit more colorful. And of course, Tom had already been the voice of the Breeders' Cup. And fortunately, to me, Tom, the best ever. the greatest announcer that I've ever heard, and the way he approached his meticulous preparation, going into all that. I mean, longtime voice of the Triple Crown, the Breeders' Cup. I mean, to me, Tom will never be surpassed, and certainly hope that his contributions to horse racing will be recognized by the National Racing Hall of Fame up in Saratoga, as Tom richly deserves.
Yeah, sometimes when I'm having a bad day, there's nothing like putting on Tom Durkin's best
Exactly.
calls.
I do the same.
And I watch it for like an hour straight, and every time I feel a heck of a lot better than when I started. But that man is just absolutely unbelievable. So I envy that you get to spend some time with him and kind of learn from him. Yeah. I'm curious, when you're up in the booth, and this is something from an announcer standpoint, I know you don't want to make a mistake at the end and you get those close photo finishes. What's kind of your rule of thumb on maybe calling a winner versus not calling a winner?
I think, it's interesting that the perspective that a lot of the fans and handicappers and bettors don't get to see is the location of the announcer booth. I mean, some of them at the fairgrounds, for example, I'm very high up. So it's that long, daunting fairgrounds homestretch down there in New Orleans. But I'm right next to the placing judges. So I'm actually, pretty good angle right on the finish line. Whereas here at Horseshoe Indianapolis, to the right to the finish line. So a lot of times you tend to think that inside horse might have held on for a photo finish win, but in fact that outside horse, in fact just got up on the line. So here I've been a little bit more cautious than some other places that I've been. Arlington was always way back in the grandstand. So when they would run in lane one, say, for example, on the turf course, and you had a jockey like Eddie Perez that would be really low in the drive to the finish, it seemed like that finish line on that inner part of the turf course at Arlington back in the day, it seemed like it was a mile away. So to try to call, a close photo finish, you probably just to be a little bit more cautious before you said wins by a nose. But I think, like I said, a lot of bettors, they think maybe that we're necessarily on the finish line, but in a lot of cases, it's really not true. Monmouth Park, for example, I give Frank Miramati a lot of credit. That announcer booth at Monmouth not only is it an open air announcer booth like Arlington was, but it's to the left of the finish line by quite some ways. So it's a tough angle to try to call a photo finish, especially in a race like the Haskell.
Yeah, I got one more question for you. So, you've called some big races, and one of the things that I really enjoyed this past Derby on the Derby Trail was covering the Derby Trail for horse racing today, and Fairgrounds just has some phenomenal prep races. I mean, those are I mean, some of the matter of fact, I think out of those races that you had at Fairgrounds were some of the better ones on the Derby Trail for sure. But if I had to say, all the big races that you've called, what's been your ultimate favorite?
I mean, at Arlington, I always go back. I know it's the Illinois bred, but when the Pizza Man won, it really put Florent Giroux on the map, and the late Roger Brueggemann, Midwest Thoroughbreds. It was such a special win, it seemed to me, for like the city of Chicago and Arlington at the time. We were still at the time, still talking about gaming. Will we get it? The status of racing there at Arlington Park, and it seemed like such a boost at the time for the Illinois bred program when the Pizza Man won that race. But then you get down, talking about the fairgrounds. I'll never forget. A lot of us remember, you think about the Louisiana Derby Day and the Fairgrounds Oaks, and we've had such great champions of the Fairgrounds Oaks over the years. Well, to me, always that Muniz Memorial. They've had some, great winners. I mean, Colonel Liam, and when Bricks and Mortar won by a nose, that was a race I'll never forget, because of course then he ran the table undefeated and became, horse of the year. So just so many great races down there, at the fairgrounds over the years when Rachel Alexandra, won down there, but she also lost. And I remember, the feeling to see her go down to defeat at the fairgrounds, which, that's what makes it such a great sport. You get a horse like that and you get a superstar, and people say, oh, it's not a good race, she's going to win. But sometimes you have to take a stand against a champion even like her, or an Echo Zulu. And, from a betting perspective, sometimes you get rewarded handsomely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, let's get right into it. We've got 3 big races here, and I'm going to start with race 10, the Jonathan B. Schuster Memorial. John, who do you like there?
I'm just curious, that outside horse having raced in the FanDuel Breeders' Cup Mile. I mean, he's the class of the race, isn't he, everyone? I mean, nearing $1 million in career earnings, and he has that outside post position to overcome. We've had the rail set at 36 feet at Horseshoe Indianapolis. I mean, obviously with the heat and the humidity here. We've had sunny skies this week, a little rain when I was leaving the track tonight, which good news. I mean, I think the turf course could use that, but we have sunny. The forecast, by the way, sunny and low 80s for Saturday. So looks like a really nice forecast for race goers, horsemen, and those competing with us on Saturday. But I was really curious about that outside Brazilian bred. I mean, Joe Talamo listed to ride, has to overcome that outside post position. But of course, you have some like it Hot Brown, just not sure what to make of the rail draw. I mean, Mike Maker, he's raced with us here this season at Horseshoe Indianapolis, and you have Rafael Bejarano, but maybe improves, the second start of 2022. But I don't know, leading from the rail, I just kind of thought that maybe there's enough pace in the race and it could set up for a closer. And obviously the class in the race, like a horse like, Ivar, from the outside. Duke of Hazzard, I've always been a big fan of Brian Hernandez Jr. I know we'll talk about Rattle and Roll for Kenny McPeak coming up in just a bit. I'm talking about the Indiana Derby. But Wesley Ward has run a few horses with us here this season already at Horseshoe Indianapolis, and a French-bred horse. And I thought he kind of has that positional pace to lie close. But Ivar's entered. He's the class. After running in the Breeders' Cup FanDuel Mile last year, at Del Mar, and I kind of look forward to seeing a horse like that near millionaire status and pick up some more money in the Saturday Jonathan B. Schuster Memorial.
All right, I'm writing that down. 12, Ivar. Okay, Sean, you're up. Who do you like in this race?
So I have the 12. I have him third, but I don't have him on top. I actually do like the rail horse. Some like it Hot Brown. Making a second start after a 6-month layoff. In the first race off the layoff, had a bump start, and I think he needed that race. This time I think he gets good start, and I think he gets good position here, either on the lead or maybe I saw potential or a leader, maybe number 4 running right, but I don't see a lot of speed in here. Number 6, Duke of Hazzard for second. This horse has a lot going for it with a lot of positive additions. New barn, Wesley Ward, first-time Lasix, third start in the U.S., and second start back after an 8-month layoff. I think he'll be close to maybe, third, fourth, not too fast of a pace, so I think he's there. And then Ivar, obviously with the class, you got to use him. I just didn't see him as a winner, so I'm going to go Ivar for third, throw him in there after running in 5 straight grade ones, gets class relief. And he also hasn't raced in 8 months, so that's another problem, taking him at a 2-to-1 morning line, and he might even be lower than that until he goes off.
Makes sense. Tom, who do you like?
Oh, I went with the local horse. I took Leading the Charge, number 8, as my top choice. 7 wins and 12 starts at the track. He won off a layoff and an optional claimer at a mile. He just loves to win. He likes the turf, and let's go for some big odds, and he'll definitely be that. I did take the one something like a Hot Brown on the rail. I like the rail for him because he's done well in the past from there, and at this distance, he's got 9 starts. He's won 4 times, and he's come second 4 times. So if he can maintain that a nice steady pace, he'll be right there. I did take Ivar as my final choice. My concern with him is he's never won off a layoff. And, in post position's a little concerned, but he also did that in the Breeders' Cup. He was way outside on the Breeders' Cup race, too, and he lost by a length and a half. Yes, he's getting class relief, but again, he's never won off a layoff. And he's I think, a very vulnerable favorite.
8, Leading the Charge, 30-1, and I missed this when I skimmed this the PPs, but you're right. Talk about horse for course. The horse is 7 for 11 at Horseshoe Indianapolis, and on the turf is 7 for 12 and 9 for 12 in the money. So it's maybe one of those special horses. I like the selection. Terry, do you like the selection?
Okay, well, I'm not going to surprise anybody because usually I agree with the guest, and again, I did today. I like Ivar. He finished third in in his last race, and he drops in class today, and his 1 for 1 at today's distance. The regular rider, Smokin' Joe Talamo, is in the irons, and he has a good 5 furlong workout on June 28th. He'll be closing like a freight train to win this race. Then my second choice is number 1, Some Like It Brown. Finished in the money in 5 out of the last 6 races. Finishing 5th in his last race as the favorite, but the trainer wins 22% of the time when he brings the favorite back to race again. And he has the highest speed figure at today's distance, and his best turf speed is fastest among today's starters. Then I like number 6, Duke of Hazzard. Came in from Europe, and in his first race, he ran 6th after being bumped. But then in his second race, the Sikh again $100,000 stakes. He ran second at Belmont Park. And then, like Tom, I love number 8, Leading the Charge. He has finished in the money in his last 8 races, winning 6 of those races. He's moving up in class, yes, but I love horses that will move up in class because when they win, and they do very often, you can get a pretty good payoff. He won't. He won his last race at Horseshoe Indianapolis, and the trainer wins 22% of the time when he brings back a winner from that won their last race to run again.
Interesting. So when I look at this race, and John mentioned this earlier, there is a potential for some pace here. And do I like the 12 and the 1? Yeah, I do like some, like at Hot Brown. I like Ivar. I get. You kind of warm me up a little bit on the 8, but I'm going to have to get every bit of this pace with a 4. I get this 4 one-dimensional speed types here. I actually have one I'm hoping draws into the race. Actually, I thought that out of the back speed, the 13 is interesting to me. So I'm going to watch and see what happens. It's an AE, but I like the fact that potentially it's a Brad Cox with Flo, the jockey, and I just think that may be one that gets a perfect setup, 15 to 1. But you got me warmed up on the 8 here too. But again, I want to see some pace. So I'm hoping there's not a lot of scratches that change things. But I'm 13-12 on top over 1-6. And if you want to throw the 9 in on the back speed, that's how I kind of land there in race number 10. So let's move ahead and go. Let's talk about the race 11. Is the Indiana Oaks Grade 3 race. Sean, I'm going to start with you.
Wow. Okay. So I went with the favorite here. I tried to look at ways to beat the favorite here, but number 5, Interstate Daydreams, coming down in class, where his partner here, Patna, number 3, is going up in class, and Florent Giroux is staying with Interstate Daydream, which is another reason here. He's Brad Cox's number 1 rider. So she's won 3 of 5 races while never missing the trifecta, gets the class relief. This will be her 6th career race and 6 different track. So and it hasn't bothered her at all. Second, I went number 1, Candy Ride. I really looked at this one to try to put on top too. I just don't know if there's enough pace, and this horse sometimes just disappoints and finishes mid-pack. So I couldn't make her my top pick, but I do see some pace in here for her to get in. She's also getting a different jockey here. She's had some really sharp workouts, which is another thing. I'm hoping she's closer to the pace than she normally is. Goes from turf back to dirt, where she's been a lot more successful. And then my third pick was the other Brad Cox horse, number 3, Patna. She's got early speed as well. I think she'll either get the lead or sit off her stablemate. I don't think those two will battle it out. And she gets the top local jockey in Martin Pedroza Jr.
John, who do you like in the Oaks?
Yeah, I have to mention, I totally agree. And, there's one thing about Candy Raid, given, the fact that we're doing this live here tonight. No live racing at Horseshoe Indianapolis on Friday, but Candy Raid is also cross-entered. She's also in the Iowa Oaks. So Prairie Meadows, they start later on Saturday night. We have a 12:20 first post time Eastern on Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see where Keith DeSormo goes with her, but it seems like maybe more leaning toward, Prairie Meadows with Candy Raid. So, and for all the reasons, I same thing, Interstate Daydream. I thought maybe about Padna. I remember when she ran on debut, it was on Louisiana Derby Day, and Belle Rebelle won the opener that day. It was Joel Rosario, Steve Asmussen, and of course, they wound up winning, 7 races on Louisiana Derby Day, 6 or 7 races, including Epicenter and that $1 million twinspires.com Louisiana Derby. But Patna was right there on the undercard. So I really like this filly, but again, Florent Giroux and Brad we trust, and you'd like to think that Flo and his agent Doug Bradar, they talked about both Patna and Interstate Daydream, and they're going with Interstate Daydream. It is the favorite for the Indiana Oaks, and I think she's gonna she figures just to get the perfect trip, stalking trip again, no matter what the pace there is, speed there is, and if a horse like Candy Raid does run with us, she figures as noted to drop out the back, and she tends to come closing late, but it's just been too late in her recent efforts. So, Interstate Daydream to be right there for Florent Giroux. get the victory. And then I like North County and Joe Talamo riding for Brendan Walsh. We've seen some horses that have run a turf ray on the all-weather come here to Horseshoe Indianapolis. They've acquitted themselves really well. So maybe her, given the fact if Candy Raid, in fact, goes in the Iowa Oaks, but I've got to give a little Tom Amos. He's 10 wins away from 4,000 career wins, 63 caliber, has a couple of wins over the track. And again, if Candy Raid goes to Iowa and not Indiana for our Oaks here on Saturday, I'll put that 63 caliber. She's been in good form. And my racehorse is part of the ownership of a 63 caliber. If she were to get to the winner's circle, that's going to be a hell of a lot of photos for our track photographer, Cody.
John, before we move on, we've talked a lot about Flo tonight. What do you think about Florent going to Del Mar? Do you like the move, and how do you think he'll do out there?
Yeah, I think it's a great move. In years past, Flo hasn't gotten a ton of business and had, great success outside of the big stake races at Saratoga. Well, why not go to Del Mar? Give it a try. He's ridden at Ellis Park. He's done, he's done well there. He can still make Del Mar his base. Probably not planning to ride the California circuit year round, but being at Del Mar, if Brad Cox calls his agent, Doug Bradar, they can go to Saratoga. They can jet up there and ride in a, graded stake race and then come back to the Del Mar base of operations. Hope to see him at Fairgrounds this coming winter. He's been at Oaklawn, but I'm sure, Florent, he can ride the top 3-year-olds for Brad, some juveniles late in the year, in November after Thanksgiving and December, and, line up maybe a future Derby mount at the Fairgrounds. And also, don't forget, we've got that Stoll Wilson turf course, and Florent can also ride some Brad Cox turf horses. So we'll see where Flo goes after Del Mar for sure. But I think it's a great move. Give it a try, and you can still jet around the country and pick up stakes wins and a lot of purse money.
Yeah, it's a good call on the My Racehorse thing, because it's people talk about this quite a bit, that how much does that impact the betting window and driving some of the value down, because a lot of people are putting bets on their horse that they're part owners on. So that's an interesting take. And it's 10-1 morning line. I'm willing to bet you the horse won't be 10-1 come post time.
Amos factor.
The My Racehorse factor. Yep, it's certainly a thing for sure.
Great to see them in the winner's circle when they come. They buy a lot of Cody photo track win photos when they're in the winner's circle, and as you mentioned, they're putting money through the betting window. So good for handle, good for the sport.
Absolutely. Terry, who do you like in the Oaks?
Well, first of all, I like my racehorse. I actually had shares in Authentic, so it's really been great. And I have shares now in other horses. But in this race, I like it's hard, like everybody said, number 5, Interstate Daydream is hard to pass. Won the Black-Eyed Susan at Plimco in her last race. She can either go to the front or lead to the finish line, or she can catch the front runners from coming off close to the pace. And I like that angle. Jockey Florette Girl rode her in her last 3 races and returns to ride her again. And she has a high percentage winning trainer, and she has the highest last speed rating, and her best start speed is the best among today's starters. Then I like the number 3 horse, Patna. It's another entry by Brad Cox and has 2 races in a row that she's won, and including the last one at Churchill Downs. She comes from good breeding. Her sire is Into Mischief out of Harlem's Holiday, and she has a good workout on July 2nd, which was a minute and 2 breezing, minute 0.2. And then I like number 4 is my third pick, Silverleaf. Has finished in the money in 4 out of 5 career races, breaking her maiden in her last race by 9 lengths. She's trained by Kenneth McPeak, who's winning at a 17% clip this year, and she's ridden by Brian Hernandez Jr., who returns to ride her after he took her to break her maiden in the last race. And then I like, as my 4th pick, number 7, Runaway Wife, finished in the money in her last 3 races, increasing her speed rating in each of those races, so that means she's coming into condition. She ran second as a favorite in her last race, but the trainer wins 26% of the time when he brings back a beaten favorite to race again, and she will stay close to the leaders and try to close in the stretch to win.
Tom, give me a bomb.
Nope. Sorry. I'm cocky as hell here. I can't get past Interstate Daydream. But the one thing we didn't point out was she ran against Nest, did nothing, but we know what Nest has done in the Belmont. So she's faced some decent horses. Patna is I go with that. I think it's a horse that wants longer distance, and I think that'll only help. And that may make a little bit of an upset here. Finally, I took number 2, Napa Candy. So you guys like the other Candy. I went with this one. It's only a maiden winner, but 2 of its races at the optional claimer level of 80,000 were kind of forgettable because a terrible post, got the 9 and the 12. The horse was wide most of the race, and it just didn't run. And then they come back and they put a 47-4 in this horse. I think it wants 2 turns. It's a by Candy ride. It could sneak in there and win, but I think more of a placing is added some decent odds is better opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm not going to belabor the point. I mean, I think this for me, Interstate Daydream is probably a single. You're either going to go with this one or you're not going to go against it and just spread. We hope somebody else comes in. Candy Raid right now, based on the pace. I mean, I think it has a legit chance. I'm 5 on top, 1 in the second spot. It's just one other thing I want to call out right now. The way the race sets up from a pace standpoint is the 9. I'm sorry, is the 9? I'm looking at the 6. I'm sorry, the 6. Not North County, and John brought this horse up, is the Lone Presser. So regardless of how you see, when I see the race flow here, this horse could be in the mix. I'm not going to say this horse is going to win it, but this may be a good opportunity to add some value here underneath the 5 if you love that one. But just noted right now, Lone Presser in the race, and I think it has a shot. All right. So, John, I'm gonna start with you because the big one is the Indiana Derby.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was a fan of Rattle and Rolls going back to after the Fountain of Youth. And the reason why, I remember after the Fountain of Youth, there was a lot of talk about this horse coming for Kenny McPeek for the TwinSpires.com Louisiana Derby down there at the fairgrounds. And I remember talking with Brian after the Fountain of Youth, and he said, John, the Rattle and Roll just didn't like the track there at Gulfstream Park that day. So there was a lot of high expectations for Rattle and Roll, going through, the 3-year-old series in the spring. And of course, Epicenter winds up winning the Louisiana Derby down there at the fairgrounds. So I've been a big fan of Rattle and Roll, but obviously the big question mark, wheeled right back from all accounts. Kenny McPeek told Jenny Reese in an interview this week. Jenny was talking to Kenny about Rattle and Roll, about the short rest. And he said, the horse is training well, eating up well after his workouts, after the win in the American Derby, which of course used to be run at Arlington Park on the turf, but now, it was on the dirt under the Twin Spires only a few days ago, 1 week ago. So Kenny's wheeling this horse right back, on short rest. I like Rattle and Roll, but I'm not going to pick him on top in Saturday's Grade 3 Indiana Derby. I'm going to go. I've been going back and forth. So I think I'm going to go with King Ottoman. I liked his win in the Texas Derby. It's Steve Asmussen. I'm looking for kind of like a new horse to step forward. I thought about Best Actor. He's undefeated 2 for 2. And obviously Florent Giroux has won the Indiana Derby a couple of times. Brad Cox, also, Eclipse Award-winning trainer, but he's done well here at Horseshoe Indianapolis as well. But I kind of leaned King Ottoman's way. Marcelino Pedrosa Jr., he's riding great here this season. 3-time riding champion at Horseshoe Indianapolis, so in good hands. And Steve's bringing this horse here off a win. Granted, he kind of went off those 10-1 odds, Lone Star Park over the field down there. But I think, a nice grade 3 test for a horse like King Ottoman. He's got the confidence boost. He ran at Churchill Downs, faced, tough stock there in Kentucky, got that confidence boost that maybe he needed at Lone Star Park, winning the Texas Derby. Now comes in here against, obviously, Unoho. He won the Rebel, but first start since the Arkansas Derby. And then you have, a young horse like Best Actor that's undefeated, but also stepping up into stakes class. Rattle and Roll, short rest, coming back for Kenny McPeek, roll right back. And also, Mullins is an impressive local horse, an Indiana bred. He's cross-entered in the Snack Stakes, along with New Year's Fever, trained by Brandy Steele. So we'll see which way those horses go, like New Year's Fever and also Mullins, who's been running kind of my little sleeper pick, maybe for third, Mullins. But I'm going to take King Ottoman on top, put Rattle and Roll for second, and then round it out with Mullins for third. But, Rattle and Roll, to beat, but coming back on short rest. And we'll see how the Indiana Derby fares on a Saturday here at 6:40 post time Eastern.
For sure. And I just was looking at King Ottoman. He certainly got the pedigree, that's for sure, with Curlin. And I like actually the pedigree standpoint of that horse.
Coming around and, again, heading up to the Midsummer Derby. Obviously, Steve Asmussen has Epicenter, in the stable for the Spa, but maybe a nice 3-year-old in King Ottoman, who's maybe an improving horse. And after that confidence boost of Lone Star, maybe he continues his winning ways here at Horseshoe Indianapolis.
Okay. Terry, who do you like in the Derby?
All right. Well, let me start out by saying I like number 7, Best Actor. It's a young horse, has won both of its career races easily. Won one of them by leading all the way, and the other one by closing from off the pace to win. He's trained by Brad Cox, and they're ridden by jockey Florette Guru. And then I like number 3, Mullins. But as John said, he's also cross-entered into the what is it called? Snack Stakes. And I got a feeling they're going to run him in that one. But he finished in the money in 7 out of 8 races, winning 4 of the races. Veteran jockey John Court returns to ride him again after winning him by 5 lengths in the last race. And he has a good 4-furlong workout. And then I like as my third choice, number 8, Actuator. Took an 8-month break, but then returned to Churchill for his first race and won that by 7 lengths. Is a bullet workout on July 2nd of 59-1. Breezing, the best of 26. Then I like number 6, Rattle and Roll. Won the American Derby 200K in his last race at today's distance and got the highest last speed rating and his best dirt speed is fastest among today's starters. And if they do take and scratch Mullins, I want to stick New Year's Fever in there, who's undefeated in 2 career starts.
Tom?
I took 8. Actuator is my top choice. I like that 7-furlong race, winning by 7+, came out of the 10 hole. Really looked good in that race. He's running Indy on the turf. He got 2/3, but I think really moving him to the dirt has made the difference. Again, those works are really good. Terry mentioned the one week. There's another one in 47 breezing. So 2 turns has already been tried on the turf, so that's not an issue, and I think it's coming nicely to form. I did like Terry's second choice of the Best Actor as my second choice, 2 for 2. Yeah, that other race was a moved turf race, but that's become the norm at Churchill because they're having problems. And they won by 4, and he came out of the 11 post, so he did a nice job. I actually think his maiden race was a tougher race. And going back and looking at that at Oaklawn in the slop, he had to really work to win that race. So, this is Brad Cox, and he certainly knows how to win. I took Rattle and Roll as my final choice. My concern with him basically is he ran his best speed number last out. And the last time he ran his best speed number last out, he didn't do anything. And if that pattern falls in, he's probably going to do nothing.
Okay. Sean, who do you got in the Derby?
So I got Best Actor too, Florent Giroux. We're looking for a sponsor. It's unfortunate we don't get paid for how many times we say Florent Giroux tonight. Or if you're doing a drinking game with Florent Giroux, you're not even hearing this anymore because you passed out by now. But I'm not impressed by this field really. A lot of horses with names, but they're kind of disappointments. So I went with the one that hasn't done anything wrong, number 7, Best Actor. There's not a lot of pace in here, and he wants to be on it or close to the lead, and I think he gets there. He's won on both the sloppy and fast track. So I'm going with the horse that hasn't done anything wrong. And then second, I'm going, like John said, the improving horse here, number 4, King Ottoman. This is another horse that was disappointing in the beginning, but he finally broke that maiden last time out, which was the toughest race he's been in. He was at least consistent before that with 3rd and 4th, and gets the leading local rider, Marcelino Pedroza Jr. And then for 3rd, I went number 8, Actuator. He broke his maiden last time out, which was the first time he ran on dirt, and he did it really impressively. Gets James Graham again, and he's another one that should be close to the pace and something I don't really see a lot of pace in here. How you see it, Chris?
Well, I hate going along with the crowd here, but that's the same thing I did too. Listen, I'm still licking my wounds from the Louisiana Derby, where
Me too.
Where Rattle and Roll. I thought for sure if you go back and watch it, that was my top pick for the Louisiana Derby. I remember that. But we go back and we see that I like the 7 best actor, lightly raced, Brad Cox, Flo the jockey. And I just think, this one here, I mean, it was a $330,000 purchase too, when I look at it. So it's not a cheapie for sure. I think we've got something here. This is probably the class of the class. I mean, do I like Rattle and Roll? And would I be surprised if Rattle and Roll puts the field away here pretty easy? No. But I think I'm going to go 7-6 here. And that's probably how it's going to come out. But I'm 7-6 over the 9 in this race.
Yeah, I mean, some great winners in the past. You mentioned Jockey Florent Giroux. I mean, he won on Axelrod in 2018 and Shared Sense in 2020 for Brad Cox. So no strangers to the Horseshoe Indianapolis Winners Circle. Mentioning New Year's Fever also cross-entered in that snack stakes. We've got some really good turf action coming up on Saturday with that nice forecast, sunny in the 80s. We're also going to be part of that cross-country Pick 5. So a couple of races from Belmont Park, a couple of stakes races, and then the final 3 that we covered here tonight. Those will be the final 3 races in that cross-country Pick 5. So it's going to be great to be a part of that with the NYRA crew teaming with us on Saturday for cross-country Pick 5. Mr. Wireless, last year's winner of the Indiana Derby for Brett Calhoun on the undercard on Saturday. So look forward to a big day, everyone at Horseshoe Indianapolis with a 12:20 Eastern first post.
Okay. Anything else anybody else wants to add?
No,
Not
not
really
really.
that often.
I just want to say thanks to John for coming on again. I really enjoy the interviews with you. And I love listening to you call the races, so that's really good. And I can tell you the first time I bet a horse, my dad bet it for me when I was 8 years old.
You got me beat, though.
Yeah, well, he was named Colonel Cross, and he won and beat my dad's horse by about a head, paid $68.60, and my dad was pretty upset.
Thanks, Hollywood.
John, I just wanted to ask you, I guess one last thing, because I'm pretty passionate about Saratoga. That's the reason why I got into racing, why I'm so passionate. I think that's what hooked you. What is your favorite thing about Saratoga?
Oh, I just, it was so great, even just waiting for the gates to open, and then just, finding a great spot, getting settled in. And of course, as the years went on, it went from, being with my mother and father to going up there with friends to actually working for NYRA back in the late 80s, early 90s. That's the one thing that, I grew up going to a racetrack, experiencing a racetrack like Saratoga. And for me, the sad part, speaking of Chicago, is I saw so many young fans that used to come out to, Arlington International Racecourse, such a beautiful place to take in the races, whether it was, Mother's Day, 30,000 plus fans, Father's Day, the 4th of July, Million Day. We would always pack there at Arlington, and a future generation of race fans, as I was as a kid, as Hollywood was a kid, when you went to the track, and you won't have a chance to experience that in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And I think that's a real shame and a real loss for horse racing.
Yes. Well, you're a real gem to this whole industry with everything that you do. I love your energy. I love, what you bring to this game. Again, when I hear your voice, I think of, I just think of being at the track, and I think of those. I live up in the Northeast, so I think about fairgrounds. It's probably we're under 3 feet of snow up here, and just listening to your voice does warm me up at the end of the day. And I really enjoy all your work and all the things you do, and know that we're going to be playing along with you at Horseshoe Indianapolis. And we really do appreciate your time and coming on the show here tonight, John.
Yeah, appreciate all you guys and, the passion for making selections and giving out your picks and all part of the game. And hopefully we put your viewers and fans on some winners for Saturday's big day here.
Awesome. We appreciate you, sir. So
appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.
We'll see if we can do this in unison here. I'm going to see how good I can do it. I'm not rich, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off. I hope all your picks on Saturday at Horseshoe Indianapolis, you score some tickets and you end up in the
Winner's Circle.
All right, you guys nailed it. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night. Cheers.
Good night.